I can fire you anytime I want. Know your place." The furious shout pierced through the outskirts of the town factory. Standing tall in a sleek, expensive suit and polished leather shoes, the young elite from the parent company, Tyler, glared down at us, the workers in our grease-stained uniforms. Usually, the rhythmic hum of motors and the clang of metal striking metal formed the soundtrack of our days, but this morning, his voice grated on my ears more than anything else. "Hey, clean this place up. That oil stain over there is disgusting. The company president's daughter will be here soon. Do you want me to embarrass myself by showing her this filthy mess?" Tyler barked out orders non-stop, his sharp gaze darting around the factory floor, leaving no room for rest. Even though our workload was already packed with urgent tasks, he refused to budge. "Cleaning comes before everything else," he insisted. The factory manager, Ryan, frowned as he watched, but since this was a direct order from the parent company, he couldn't openly oppose it. "William, are you deaf or just useless? You've been standing there doing nothing. If you're not going to work, I'll cut your pay. I can fire you anytime I want." At last, his anger turned toward me. I held my tongue and met his glare. If I focused on cleaning, we wouldn't meet today's deadline. But if I argued, it would only make things worse. I ran through countless scenarios in my head, but in the end, all I could do was grit my teeth in silence. Just then, the sliding factory door creaked open, and the entire room fell into a hushed stillness. "Thank you for waiting. I've come from the main office for an inspection. I apologize for the sudden visit." At the entrance stood a woman with an air of quiet authority. Her elegant suit and composed demeanor cast a stark contrast against the worn-down factory surroundings. Tyler hastily straightened his posture and stepped forward. "Good afternoon, Samantha. We were just making final preparations for your visit. These workers have been completely uncooperative, so well." Before he could finish, she turned her sharp gaze toward me and cut him off. "Of course, he's not listening to you. After all, his true identity is." The air in the factory froze instantly. Even the ever-present machine noise seemed to fade, leaving only an eerie silence. Under the dim fluorescent lights, I could see Tyler's expression twist in confusion and unease. Little did I know that this seemingly ordinary morning inspection would end up dramatically changing my life and the fate of this small factory. None of us here could have imagined such a future. My name is William. I work in this dusty old factory. As I opened the faded iron door, the sharp scent of oil and burning metal stabbed at my nostrils. The constant hum of aging machines and the distant clang of metal filled the air. This was my daily reality. This was a small factory on the outskirts of town. The smell of machine oil lingered deep in my nose, and the darkened concrete floor creaked in protest. Rows of well-worn machinery stand lined up, each showing the scars of time with rust and scratches. Ryan, the factory manager, often says, "These machines are old friends we've relied on for years," and he makes sure they get regular maintenance. But even so, their age is undeniable. Looking around, it was clear just how outdated and struggling this place really was. And yet, the factory had been unusually busy these past few days. The reason was obvious. Today, inspectors from the main office were coming. News had spread that the company president's daughter, Samantha, would be visiting today, leaving the factory workers restless since morning. "Hey, is it true that someone from the main office is coming today?" "Yeah, apparently. And the president's daughter is coming too. Rumor has it she's the next in line to take over. I heard she's stunning. Man, I'd love to see her just once." Whether in the break room or on the factory floor, this was the only topic of conversation. But there, already ahead of me, was Tyler, an employee from the main office. Apparently, he was a rising young leader at the parent company and had decided to show up at the factory even before the inspection. To the people on the floor, his presence was honestly more of a nuisance than a help. "Hey, you guys, have you finished cleaning properly? Samantha is coming soon, you know. It'd be rude to welcome her with the place in this kind of mess." Tyler barely gave the morning meeting any attention before running around, barking orders at the workers to clean up and straighten the place. His pristine suit, clearly untouched by factory grime, stood out in the worst way, and the way he constantly brushed off imaginary dust was downright irritating. More than anything, his commanding tone and condescending attitude toward us, the subcontracted workers, rubbed everyone the wrong way. For the veteran workers who had spent years sweating on this floor, it was nothing short of infuriating. "Hey, we're in the middle of a crucial process right now. You expect us to stop the machines just for this? Just shut up and do as you're told." Tyler wouldn't listen to reason. I could see the workers behind him exchanging bitter glances. But with his status as a corporate representative, no one dared to push back outright. A tense atmosphere began to settle over the factory. Even in the midst of it all, I kept my mouth shut and focused on my work. There was a batch of parts that had to be completed by the end of the day. Talking back wouldn't get the job done, and working with my hands was the priority. "Hey!" A sharp voice rang out behind me. Tyler pointed at me, glaring as if personally offended. "Are you deaf? I told you to clean. Why are you still working? If you can't follow orders, I'll cut your pay. Or maybe you'd rather be fired." I stopped what I was doing and stared at him. If I said anything, things would only escalate. But if I stopped working now, we might miss the deadline. This wasn't just about me falling behind. It was about the factory's credibility. Still, Tyler kept yelling, completely indifferent to the bigger picture. "Say something. I can't read your mind, you know." Even if I wanted to explain, I wasn't sure how to make him understand. Yes, cleaning was important, but if we stopped now, the entire production schedule would be thrown off. That would delay our delivery, which in turn would create problems for the parent company itself. But how was I supposed to explain all that in the middle of him shouting at me? "Sorry, Tyler, but there's a reason William isn't saying anything. Just take a breath and calm down." In the middle of the workshop, where a slightly awkward tension hung in the air, Ryan stepped in between me and Tyler. Ryan is the factory manager who has been running this place for years. He wore plain work clothes, with a pair of oil-stained gloves casually hanging from his side. William's work is important. Maybe these parts don't seem like much to the parent company, but if we don't take care of them properly, it'll affect your company's reputation too. We're already on a tight schedule, so cut him some slack. Tyler's scowl remained as he crossed his arms and exhaled sharply. The sound of his pristine leather shoe tapping against the concrete floor echoed louder than it should have. Even so, we can't have this place looking like a dump for the inspection. He looks completely unmotivated. His eyes were back on me, sharp and accusing. He's not unmotivated. He's just thinking things through in his own way. He's never been much of a talker, though. Ryan chuckled slightly, half exasperated, but still standing up for me. He knew me well enough to understand that I wasn't just being difficult. "Seriously, forget it. At least make sure the others do their job properly. I won't let you off with just a pay cut." With a scoff, Tyler turned away, clicking his tongue in irritation. Tyler swept his gaze across the workshop and immediately redirected his frustration at other workers. "Make sure you clean that area properly, and don't leave unnecessary tools lying around." He barked out orders one after another, making no effort to hide his irritation, as if he held absolute authority over the entire parent company. "Sorry, Ryan," I called out to him as he was about to walk away, muttering those words before I could stop myself. "You have nothing to apologize for. Anyone would feel the same way after being bossed around by Tyler. This place has its own way of doing things." Even I was thinking, mind your own business. Ryan gave me a couple of firm pats on the shoulder with his free hand. The arm peeking out from his oil-stained work uniform bore the marks of years of labor. A self-made craftsman through and through, he was the kind of man who led by action rather than words. That's why he had no hesitation in standing up for me earlier. A few moments later, a sudden commotion erupted outside the factory. Someone burst in, shouting, "She's here!" The president's daughter just arrived. Tyler immediately straightened his back and adjusted his tie. The sharp clack of high heels echoed against the concrete floor. A wave of murmurs spread through the room. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedules. I am Samantha, here today from the main office for an inspection. I appreciate your cooperation. Her voice was clear and poised. A polite yet cheerful voice. For a brief moment, the entire factory fell silent. I stole a glance in her direction, and my breath caught. Illuminated by the workshop's overhead lights stood a refined woman in a perfectly tailored suit. Her soft hair was neatly pulled back, and she scanned the room with a gentle smile. "We've been expecting you." Tyler was the first to speak up and stepped forward in front of her, as if he were the factory's official representative. "Tyler, thank you as always. We don't have much time today, but I'm counting on you. Of course, just let me know if you need anything. I have a pretty good grasp of how things work around here." He said that with confidence, but the truth was that Ryan and the veteran workers were the ones who truly understood this place. Tyler had only been sent here recently by the parent company. I couldn't help but smirk internally, though I kept my thoughts to myself. By the way, I noticed some kind of argument near the entrance earlier. What was that about? When Samantha asked curiously, Tyler, as if he had been waiting for this moment, promptly pointed at me. It was him, this guy right here. He flat out ignores instructions, completely unmotivated. Honestly, on a day as important as this, Samantha reacted to his words, shifting her gaze toward me for a moment. Then, turning back to Tyler, she casually said, "Him? Well, I can understand why he wouldn't listen to you." Tyler frowned in confusion. "Huh? What's that supposed to mean? He's just a subcontracted factory worker, isn't he?" "No, he used to be an engineer at NASA." "What?" Tyler nearly stumbled backward, and the entire factory erupted in murmurs. Everyone was in utter disbelief. "NASA?" "That's right. His mind is filled with theories and expertise beyond what we can even imagine. So, before you accuse him of being unmotivated, maybe consider that he's simply thinking on a different level." Samantha's expression sharpened as she continued. "Also, I heard the word pay cut being thrown around earlier. Care to explain that? Threatening a valuable partner like that is completely unacceptable." Her voice wasn't particularly loud, yet every word carried unwavering confidence and authority. Tyler opened his mouth to respond, but failed to produce a single coherent word. Samantha let out a quiet sigh before offering him a small, composed smile. "Before anything else, shouldn't you try to understand the situation first? This may be a subcontractor's factory, but to us, it's an irreplaceable hub of technology and skilled professionals." As Samantha's composed voice resonated through the workshop, Tyler bit his lip in frustration, unable to say another word. In the end, he didn't even bother offering a half-hearted nod before hastily turning on his heel and walking away. The scheduled inspection wrapped up about an hour later. "Samantha, shall we head back to the main office? I'm sure the president, Mr. King, is expecting us." Tyler made the suggestion, but Samantha took a moment to scan the workshop before responding. "Sorry, but I'd like to talk directly with the workers a bit more. It's almost lunchtime anyway, so I was thinking of having a lunch meeting. William, would you join me?" Hearing my name out of nowhere, I instinctively sucked in a small breath. Yeah. "Tyler, I'm afraid you'll have to return to the main office ahead of us. I'll inform my father myself. I appreciate your understanding." Firmly told off, Tyler reluctantly nodded. Though his expression still showed some dissatisfaction, he quickly left the factory, clutching the inspection documents. "Shall we go, William? Do you know a good place to eat nearby?" Yeah, I do." With the weight of everyone's curious stares pressing against my back, I awkwardly followed Samantha out of the factory. My pulse pounded like a drum, and I had no idea how I was supposed to get through this lunch. As if seeing right through me, Samantha chuckled softly while walking. "William, you don't have to be so nervous. It's not some formal business meeting." She was the daughter of the company president, the head of the corporate planning division, and my childhood friend. We grew up in the same neighborhood, walking the same route to school from elementary through high school, spending afternoons together like it was the most natural thing in the world. Back then, seeing her every day was routine. Never in a million years did I think we'd reunite like this. Still, you're the president's daughter and a department head now. No matter what you say, the factory guys might see me as acting too familiar with you, I muttered as we strolled through the old shopping district outside the factory. I wasn't much of a talker, but with Samantha, I had always been able to open up at least a little. That said, walking alone with her after so many years felt oddly unfamiliar. Hey, you haven't changed at all, William. Sure, I might be Mr. King's daughter and a department head now, but that doesn't mean any of that matters between us, does it? Samantha slowed her pace slightly, matching mine. Yeah, well, I'm just glad you haven't changed. I appreciate it. As I said that, she smirked playfully and shrugged. Appreciate it? You look a lot happier than that, though. Do I? I fumbled for a response, making her laugh. Beyond the factory, the shopping district stretched ahead of us. Even at midday, the streets were sparsely populated with shuttered storefronts here and there. It was a stark contrast to the liveliness I remembered from years ago. Time could be cruel. We ended up choosing a small diner at the very edge of the district. Sorry about earlier. I kind of exposed your past out of nowhere. I know you weren't necessarily hiding it, but I couldn't stand hearing you being dismissed as just a factory worker. It's fine. I never planned to keep my NASA background a secret anyway. Whether it came out that way or some other way, it was bound to happen sooner or later. Even as I said that, I couldn't shake the memory of everyone's reactions. They reacted with shock, disbelief, and a lingering question in their eyes. Why is someone like that working here? People were pretty surprised. Even Tyler wouldn't stop pestering me about it. Tyler, huh? Is he really well regarded at the main office? I asked, more out of curiosity than anything else. Samantha gave a slightly awkward smile. He's competent, I'll give him that. Handling paperwork and negotiating with clients, he does his job. But he has an ego. He tends to look down on people. That's his biggest flaw. I recalled the way he treated us at the factory. It's true that his attitude was one-sided. The words subcontractor and worker seemed stuck in his mind, reinforcing the hierarchy where the parent company stands above and the subcontractor below. As I mulled over my thoughts, our food arrived. There were a steaming plate of pork with ginger sauce and a hearty pork cutlet bowl. The two of us exchanged a quick, "Let's eat," before picking up our chopsticks. For someone who usually grabbed a quick bite, just bread or rice balls, this was the first proper meal I'd had in a while. The rich flavor spread across my tongue, loosening the tension in my chest just a little. So, William, to people like me, NASA feels like a whole different world. Was it as tough as it seems? While eating, Samantha asked curiously. She was probably trying to be considerate in her own way. I set my chopsticks down and stared at the steaming pork cutlet bowl in front of me before answering. It wasn't so much that it was tough. I guess I just pushed myself too hard. At first, I was completely obsessed. I've been fascinated by space and aeronautical engineering since I was a kid. You remember, right? I used to tell you all the time back in school, I'm going to create new technology in space and change the world. Yeah, I remember. And I used to say, then I'll support you. Let's make the world a better place together. Samantha chuckled softly and took a sip of water from her glass. When we were still in high school, I think we talked about that while looking up at the night sky. To go even further back, we had been sharing our dreams since middle school. We said things like, I'll become an astronaut and invent new things on the moon and Mars, and no, I'll take humanity even farther than that. We used to laugh together, spinning those grand, baseless dreams. When I actually got to NASA and started working on cutting-edge research, I was thrilled. I really believed I could contribute to new technology and shape humanity's future. I hesitated for a moment. Taking a bite of my food and swallowing, I continued. but the research I wanted to do was considered unrealistic. Other teams were focused on more practical projects, and mine kept getting pushed aside. Eventually, I started clashing with my superiors, and well, you were basically forced out, right? Pretty much. To them, I was just a troublemaker chasing dreams that weren't worth investing in. I let out a short laugh, but Samantha didn't join in. She didn't pity me, nor did she try to dismiss what had happened. She just listened, accepting my words as they were. After leaving the US, you had a hard time finding work back here too, didn't you? My dad mentioned it once. He said we could hire him at one of our subcontracted factories. What do you think? Yeah, if it weren't for that, I might have ended up on the streets. I'm really grateful to Samantha's father for giving me the chance to work at this factory like this. When I said that, Samantha shrugged slightly, looking a bit embarrassed. My father's always been someone who believes in nurturing young talent. But, William, even if you have incredible theories and skills, if you can't communicate them well, people misunderstand you. That's why I always thought I could be your translator. Translator, huh? That was just like her. Even when I got so absorbed in something that I tuned out everything around me, she was the only one who would patiently ask, "Is this what you mean?" and then explain my thoughts to teachers or classmates. If she had been at NASA with me, maybe things would have turned out differently. The thought made me smile bitterly. I'd appreciate that. I really struggled to put things into words. Even back at the factory, when Tyler kept calling me unmotivated, I didn't have the energy to argue. When you stay silent, people really have no idea what you're thinking. But that's not a bad thing. If anything, it just means you think deeply before acting. Still, it's true that people tend to misunderstand you. Back in school, we used to talk about big dreams all the time. Let's make the world a better place together. When Samantha murmured that, it felt like the entire atmosphere in the diner shifted slightly. We had been so innocent back then. The bigger the dream, the more admirable it seemed. Even if people laughed at us, we swore we'd keep moving forward. Growing up, facing reality, and walking separate paths, we may never truly let go of those ideals. Samantha, do you still believe that? That we can make the world a better place? Of course, the approach might change, but I'm trying to move the company in a way that contributes to society. That's why I visit factories like this to see things firsthand and hear from the people doing the work. My father gave me the title of department head, but I'm still learning every day. Samantha's expression as she said that didn't seem filled with confidence, but rather, it shone with a certain kind of resolve. She might have been the president's daughter, but that also meant she had her own burdens to carry. Thinking about that, I couldn't help but recall my own struggles, being isolated in the research lab and unable to get anyone to listen. I know that talking about making the world better makes some people roll their eyes. Even me coming to the factory gets dismissed as a PR stunt. But I believe you won't laugh at me, William. Of course not. I haven't given up either. Things didn't work out at NASA, but that doesn't mean my ideas are worthless. Hey, I knew it. By the time we finished our meal and stepped outside, the afternoon sunlight had grown stronger, casting a warm glow over the worn-down shopping district. A few students were passing by on their way home from school, reminding me of how we used to walk these same streets years ago. Hey, William, I'm going to be asking for your input a lot from now on, about how we can apply the factory's technology, how we can improve efficiency, and maybe even some advice on handling people. I'm no expert on human relations, but if there's anything I can help with, I'll try. Thanks. You know, I never said this properly before, but talking to you like this really puts me at ease. You've always been that way, always there when I needed you. Samantha smiled, and I found myself glancing away, feeling slightly embarrassed. Her words stirred up memories and emotions I had nearly forgotten, peeling away old layers like a scab being removed. But instead of pain, all I felt was warmth. All right, let's head back. I'll check on the site a little more this afternoon, and then we'll wrap up for the day. Samantha smiled as she spoke, and I found myself returning a small smile of my own. When we arrived back at the factory, the afternoon shift was already in full swing. The familiar sounds of machines whirring and welding sparks flying filled the air, just like always. But something in me had changed since this morning. Talking with Samantha had given me a confidence I didn't realize I was missing. Ryan spotted me and gave a curt nod. "Oh, you're back." Before, I would have simply replied with a short, "Yeah," and left it at that. But today, for some reason, I felt the urge to take it a step further. "Ryan, could you take a look at the design I mentioned the other day for the new tooling fixture?" "Huh? What's gotten into you? You never start conversations like this." Ryan blinked in surprise before breaking into a grin. Feeling slightly self-conscious, I unfolded a small, neatly folded blueprint. It was a concept I had put together to improve precision using our old machining tools. It was an improvement idea inspired by my time at NASA, but until now, I had held back, assuming no one would understand it anyway. But after my conversation with Samantha, I finally found the courage to put it into action. This could actually be interesting. Looks like it could simplify some of our more complex processes. Yeah, the material cost shouldn't be too high either. Since the factory can't afford a full-scale equipment upgrade, I thought we could start with a small prototype and test it. Samantha also mentioned she might be able to help with funding. If we frame it as a long-term cost-saving measure, we might even get backing from the main office. Smart thinking. Tyler's bound to have something to say about it, though. But I guess we can count on the company princess to smooth things over. Over the next few days, I met with Ryan and the veteran workers, refining the prototype plan. At first, some of them were skeptical. Will this even work? But as I explained the details, they started warming up to it. Actually, this might be more useful than I thought. Even so, my explanations alone weren't always enough. That's when Samantha would step in, bridging the gap at just the right moments. This section is designed to streamline the process. William adapted an idea from his NASA days to fit our factory's needs. Oh, I see. That makes sense now. Without her, things wouldn't have gone nearly as smoothly. Gradually, the modifications started taking shape, improving both productivity and cost efficiency. The prototype fixture worked as planned, shortening a particularly troublesome process while improving output quality. As overall production costs visibly declined, the atmosphere in the factory began to shift. "William, you really pulled this off. I never thought we could get this level of precision with these old machines." "Yeah, even the parent company is saying they're happy to keep us on as a supplier." I was honestly happy when the craftsmen naturally started calling me William. Before that, I was just seen as a quiet, inscrutable young guy, and truth be told, I didn't really like being approached either. But as I started seeing tangible results in my work, I finally felt like I had a real place here. At the same time, the parent company's perception of the factory was shifting too. With better quality and faster production speeds, the procurement team was considering assigning us more work. Samantha's efforts played a major role in this. Even while struggling with the pressure of having to take over my father's company and support it properly, she patiently presented my technical ideas to the board of directors and the corporate planning team at the main office. I explained everything properly, William. We even ran a cost simulation, and having concrete numbers really helped. My father seems genuinely interested. "You're incredible, Samantha. I could never have done this alone," I told her during a break, and she puffed out her chest slightly, looking pleased. "Hey, well, I am the department head, so I might as well use that title to its full potential, right? But honestly, being the president's daughter comes with a lot of baggage. People are always watching me, and I worry about living up to my father's expectations. But watching you gave me courage." "You got courage from me?" "Of course. You've always stuck to your beliefs, no matter what. Even after everything that happened at NASA, you never gave up on technology or your dreams. Seeing that made me feel like I had to step up too." She said that with her usual gentle smile. Seeing that smile makes me think it's like the moonlight that once lit up the darkness for me. Just like back when we used to stare up at the sky and talk about our dreams. She was still here, still supporting me, just like back then. And that alone made me happier than I could put into words. But not everyone was pleased with the way things were changing. Tyler, for one, was clearly growing restless. Lately, he had been visiting the factory more frequently, issuing orders to the workers and overseeing paperwork with an unusual intensity. Tyler certainly had the skills to handle negotiations and paperwork, but his arrogant attitude remained unchanged. He still looked down on subcontractors like us. "William, you've been doing quite well for yourself lately, coming up with ideas and earning the respect of the workers here. Well, it's only because everyone's been willing to cooperate. Oh, playing humble now? And I see you and Samantha have gotten pretty close. You two were friends from way back, right?" There was something unmistakably unpleasant in the way he said that. During my lunch break, while I was working in a corner of the meeting room, Tyler had deliberately come over just to throw those words at me. When I didn't immediately respond, he snorted and continued, "Well, whatever. Honestly, from my perspective, it's laughable that a genius from NASA is stuck in some small-town factory. Let's face it, you quit and came crawling back to Japan because you couldn't cut it. That makes you just another failed, ordinary man. And you're just a factory worker now. No matter how much Samantha supports you, don't start thinking you're special." With a sarcastic tone, Tyler let out an exaggerated sigh. Then, seeing that I still wasn't responding, he pressed on. "And about Samantha, don't you ever wonder? Childhood friends or not, do you really think someone like you is worthy of her? She's talented, and she's the heir to the parent company, but you're nothing. Just wait and see. Eventually, it'll become obvious who really belongs by her side." Tyler shot me an openly provocative look, scoffed, and turned on his heel. As I watched his back disappear toward the depths of the factory, I felt a heavy weight slowly settle in my chest. No matter how much I tried to move forward, my past with NASA still loomed over me. And just like Tyler said, right now, I was nothing more than a small-town factory worker. But still, I couldn't afford to give up. Because Samantha, my childhood friend, still believed in me. Meanwhile, Tyler had started his own campaign to secure achievements for himself. While I was working on improving the factory's technology, he was aggressively reaching out to major clients on behalf of the parent company. Samantha had mentioned, I assigned Tyler to handle a major client proposal, but recently, I began to hear rumors that he was making arbitrary and aggressive proposals to the client. Wait, what? He's already pitching the next product line to a big manufacturer. And he's saying our factory will handle the production? Yeah, but none of us have heard anything about it. This could be a disaster. Worried murmurs spread across the factory floor. If Tyler had gone ahead and secured a contract without consulting anyone, we could end up in a situation where our factory simply couldn't meet the demands. And if he had done this without proper approval from the parent company, it could turn into a massive problem later on. A bad feeling gnawed at my gut. Even Samantha seemed unaware of the specifics. She had told me, I assigned Tyler to pitch to a big client, but he hasn't reported back on the details yet. Knowing his pride, he's probably feeling pressured to produce results that rival mine and Samantha's by involving this small subcontractor factory. Just thinking about it makes a slow wave of anxiety spread through me. It didn't take long for my fears to become reality. It was when the afternoon's work had settled down, and I was about to head back to the factory's break room. Ah, William. Perfect timing. Tyler deliberately glanced my way, raising the corner of his mouth in a subtle smirk. I've got something to show you. Ta-da. A major contract is secured. The moment the documents were spread out in front of us with a dramatic flourish, Ryan's face instantly paled. The pages detailed a contract with a major client, complete with delivery schedules and budget estimates. The numbers seemed overly optimistic, and key production steps like testing and quality assurance were suspiciously absent. Hey, what is this? This production schedule? These costs? And where did these figures even come from? Oh, I just put together a little proposal of my own and convinced the client. I mean, you guys have been improving things with Williams' NASA-level techniques, right? So this should be no problem. Tyler puffed out his chest with confidence. His expression made it clear that he was dumping this onto us, expecting us to just make it happen. I opened my mouth to speak, but no words came out. Something was seriously wrong. The figures were far too optimistic, and the critical testing and quality control processes were missing entirely. There was no way this could be executed properly. Seeing the expression on my face, Tyler sneered. "What's wrong, William? If you're a genius from NASA, this should be no problem, right? Can't you handle this small factory and whip it up in no time? Wait, where did this production plan come from? These components, it looks almost identical to an old prototype concept I worked on. But that design was scrapped." Tyler let out an exaggerated snort. "Oh, you noticed? Well, that just proves you still have some brains left. Well, I happened to find some old blueprints in the confidential archives. Looked like it had potential, so I thought, why not use it?" That was a reckless excuse, at best. The design he took wasn't meant for actual production. It was a theoretical concept I had drafted, applying NASA techniques to a small-town factory setting if advanced technology could be integrated here. But due to cost, safety concerns, and mass production challenges, it was deemed unrealistic and shelved. It was an unfinished design. This will definitely go over budget and cause massive delays, and we don't even have the manpower or equipment to handle it. Worst case scenario, we end up with a serious defect. But before I could finish, Tyler let out an exaggerated sigh and interrupted me. "Wow, even a NASA-trained engineer is full of excuses, huh? Doesn't matter anyway. The contract's already signed. Whether you like it or not, your little factory is on the hook. So, do your best." This time, Ryan couldn't hold back. "You think this contract is even remotely reasonable? Do you have any idea how impossible this budget and timeline are? You're asking us to go from development to mass production without any breathing room. That's for you to figure out. Isn't William supposed to be a genius? That's why I could secure this deal. Our clients have high expectations." As he spoke, Tyler slapped the paper with a sharp smack and grinned. His sheer audacity made even Ryan and the surrounding workers grimace. Just then, the sound of hurried footsteps echoed as Samantha rushed in. Even her usually calm gaze was visibly unsteady. Without even taking a moment to catch her breath, she addressed Tyler in a loud voice. "Tyler, what is going on? Explain." Samantha, I was just about to report this to you. I may have gotten ahead of myself, but this is a major deal. If we pull this off, it'll be a huge win for the company." Tyler answered casually, but Samantha's expression grew even harsher. As she swiftly picked up the contract spread out on the table and scanned through it, I could see the anger in her gaze intensify. "Do you seriously think this is feasible? You didn't consult me at all. And you used William's design without permission?" "Yeah, I did. But isn't that a good thing? You did say you wanted to revitalize the subcontractor factories, didn't you? Well, here's your chance to level up all at once." His tone was icy, utterly detached. To him, this factory and all of us were nothing more than pawns in his scheme. Samantha's hands trembled as she slammed the contract onto the table. "You cannot be serious. Do you even understand what happens if we fail to deliver? This isn't just about losing a single contract. Our relationship with this client is critical. If they pull out, we won't just face penalties, we'll damage the company's reputation. That could scare off other clients, causing orders to plummet. And if cash flow dries up, it won't take long before we're facing bankruptcy. This is not just some small setback, it's a full-blown crisis." Her words were sharp, heavy with the weight of responsibility. She had grown up as the president's daughter, and she understood all too well how fragile a company's stability could be. Unlike Tyler, who wielded his pride like a weapon, she knew the real consequences of reckless decisions. "Well, if the deal falls through, it falls through. Not my problem. I secured the client. The real issue now is whether or not you can deliver." Tyler shrugged, spreading his arms as if he didn't have a care in the world, and spoke in a detached tone. His arrogance was enough to irritate even the surrounding craftsmen. "Enough of this bullshit. You went behind everyone's back and signed a deal that can't be fulfilled. You think we're just going to clean up your mess?" Tyler twitched slightly at Ryan's outburst, but quickly masked it with another smirk. "You just need to work harder. You have a NASA engineer right here, don't you? If you can't pull it off, then maybe you're just not trying hard enough. Please stop it right now." Samantha's voice rang out sharply, cutting through the factory floor like a knife. Her usual calm was gone, and her expression was filled with sheer fury. For the first time, Tyler looked momentarily caught off guard. "We need to figure out how to deal with this contract. Tyler, from now on, report everything to me regarding this deal. Ryan, William, and everyone. I need you all at a strategy meeting later. Let's just call it a day for now." Perhaps having reached a painful decision, Samantha concluded with those words. Tyler simply scoffed, muttered, "Humph," and quickly walked out of the factory, disappearing from sight. His utterly irresponsible attitude left everyone irritated, yet the room fell into silence, like the calm after a storm. After a moment, Ryan finally spoke, his face twisted into a grimace. "Damn it. If that bastard screws this up, we're the ones who'll end up on the street." "Exactly. That's why we need to find a way to salvage this. William, I'm sorry. He had no right to use your design like that." She turned to me with an apologetic look. I shook my head slightly. I had worked on that concept, even if it was just theoretical. And now that it had been thrown into an actual contract, I had to take responsibility, one way or another. "It's fine. The bigger issue is whether we can modify this contract instead of scrapping it outright. It's late, and everyone's tired. Let's regroup tomorrow and figure out a plan. If there's even the slightest chance we can make this work, we have to try." "Yes, I see. Let's have a proper meeting tomorrow. Good work today." With that, Samantha bowed deeply, then disappeared into the factory office, her shoulders slumped. She herself was probably nearing her physical and mental limits. I clenched my fists tightly and watched her back as she walked away. At night, the factory had come to a halt, and the now empty premises were enveloped in a silence that felt like sleep. In the dimly lit break room, illuminated only by the faint glow of fluorescent lights, I sat staring at blueprints and copies of contracts, my head in my hands. No matter how I tried to revise it, the conditions of this deal were nearly impossible. If we delivered a half-baked product, we'd lose credibility, and if we didn't make the deadline, the contract would be terminated immediately. On the other hand, outright saying, "We can't do it," would also be close to a breach of contract. Either way, it was a hellish situation. "William, you're still here?" The break room door suddenly opened, and there stood Samantha. She had been furious earlier, but now she looked completely drained. As I stood up from my chair, she lowered her gaze apologetically. "I'm sorry for making you work so late. I contacted my father too, and he's really angry. He kept telling me, 'Do something about Tyler.' It was understandable. As the president, Mr. King probably didn't want to put the responsibility on his own daughter. But from a business standpoint, he couldn't just overlook such a reckless contract. It's okay, Samantha. This isn't your fault. The one to blame is Tyler. And besides, I should have managed my design proposal better. But what's done is done. Now, we just have to figure out how to fix this." Even as I said that, I could feel the exhaustion seeping into my expression. The fact that I couldn't come up with a solid solution weighed on me like an unbearable burden. "William, if this keeps up, our company is really going to go under. I thought that by becoming a department head, I could make things better. But how did it come to this?" Her voice trembled slightly. Seeing Samantha, who was usually so bright and optimistic, this overwhelmed broke my heart. She was carrying both the responsibility of inheriting her father's company and her deep concern for the factory workers. Steeling myself, I gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "It's going to be okay, Samantha. I'll figure something out. I may have run away from NASA, but this time I don't want to run. This factory took me in when I had nowhere else to go, and because of that, I want to protect it. When I left NASA, I had been a failure, too stubborn about my ideals. clashing with others, and in the end, achieving nothing. But I didn't want to be that person here. There were challenges, whether it was relationships or budgets, but I had people willing to fight alongside me. And most of all, Samantha was reaching out her hand to me. "William, thank you," she whispered softly. There was weakness in her voice, but also a faint trace of relief. The way she placed her hand over mine on her shoulder brought back memories. I remember holding Samantha's hand when we were kids, walking home on a dark night while she trembled in fear. Even back then, I just wanted to make her feel safe. I'm scared too, but having you here gives me strength. Yeah, I don't want to give up either. I want to protect everyone in the factory and make a place where your skills can shine. Samantha said this with a small smile. It was weak, but I could see a hint of determination returning to her face, and that alone made me feel a little relieved. Maybe if we just pushed forward a little more, we could change our future. This faint hope flickered in my chest. The next morning, as I stepped into the factory while it was still dark, several workers were already gathered, discussing plans with Ryan. The air was tense, but there was also a sense of determination. Despite the overwhelming pressure yesterday, no one had given up. Rubbing my tired eyes, I quickly checked my documents. "William, I heard you came up with some kind of alternative plan. Is this really going to work?" It was Ryan who spoke up. His usual gruff expression carried a mix of both hope and doubt. Samantha stood beside him, watching me intently. For her too, the new proposal I had come up with was likely the only way forward. "Yeah, if we apply a technology I worked on back in the US, we might be able to pull this off. It's not perfect, but it's way more realistic than the reckless plan Tyler put forward. Costs will go up a little, but we should be able to keep the deadline." As I spoke, I pointed at the workflow chart and cost calculations I had outlined on the whiteboard. The key feature is the use of a special welding technique that allows for more complex processing to be done at once compared to conventional methods. Originally, during my time at NASA, I was aiming for seamless integrated molding by combining it with research on new materials. This proposal translates that foundational theory to the level of a small-town factory. However, it was an idea that had been rejected back then as unrealistic by my superiors and colleagues. "So this is the research you were doing at NASA. But is this really practical? Didn't they say it was impossible over there?" It's no wonder Ryan raised his eyebrows skeptically. Still, I forced myself to respond, somewhat awkwardly but with conviction. At the time, there were too many issues with the equipment and safety aspects, which made it difficult to implement. But if we simplify those areas to some extent and reduce the risks, I think we can recreate a similar form, even at the small-town factory level. In fact, by using the modified jigs at this factory, we should be able to consolidate several processes. Plus, we're not aiming for the same high precision as at NASA. If we focus on practical implementation rather than cutting-edge innovation, it should work. One of the craftsmen listening tilted his head with interest. "I see. So basically, you're taking that cutting-edge theory you have, making it a bit more manageable, but keeping the essential efficiency improvements?" "Yes, of course, it still needs testing, but at the very least, it's more stable than the draft Tyler presented. Plus, if we're willing to absorb a slight increase in cost, we can still meet the delivery deadline. The problem is getting the client to accept that slight increase." At that moment, Samantha stepped forward. "I'll handle that part. I've already told the client that there was a misunderstanding with the previous plan and that we'd like to propose a revised version. I'll go with William now and explain it directly. Everyone, please help us with this." When Samantha said that, the factory workers responded with determined nods and encouraging words like, "Leave it to us," and "We'll do everything we can." "All right, William. Let's go. We'll tighten up the presentation materials on the way." Encouraged by Samantha's words, I quickly gathered the documents. We have to make this plan work at all costs. The initial contract had been agreed upon under exceptional terms. Convincing the client to accept increased costs and changes to the content would be an uphill battle. But even knowing that, We have to try so that the small town factory and the parent company can survive. Late morning, in the reception room of the client's office building. In front of the stern-faced client representatives, I opened the PowerPoint presentation and began explaining the revised plan, my hands awkward and tense. Samantha supported me from the side, helping things proceed at least somewhat smoothly, but the atmosphere remained stiff. I see. So the cost will increase slightly compared to the original plan, and the delivery will be delayed by a few days. That's quite different from what was initially promised. We chose to contract with you after rejecting other candidates precisely because of those exceptional terms, you know? The man who seemed to be the lead representative shot a piercing gaze at me. Behind him, several stakeholders were seated, all wearing similarly tense expressions. We apologize. To be honest, that original plan was pushed through internally without sufficient validation. However, with this revised proposal, we believe we can deliver the product at sufficient quality. The cost increase is minimal, and while the delivery will be delayed by a few days, we can ensure a low-risk outcome. Samantha bowed deeply as she explained, but it was unclear whether they were convinced. The senior representatives began speaking among themselves with comments like, "If we accept that excuse now, it'll cause problems within our company, and we've already turned down other suppliers." The room grew heavy with tension. As I explained earlier, if the contract is terminated at this stage, we will suffer significant damage. However, if we force the original terms and compromise quality, it could cause even greater harm to your company. Samantha persisted desperately, but the atmosphere remained hostile. I wanted to say something to back her up, but I couldn't find the right words and felt myself suffocating. Just then, there was a knock at the door. When one of their representatives simply said, "Excuse me," an unfamiliar foreigner suddenly appeared. As their representative addressed him in English, the foreigner, a man in his 40s wearing a suit, stepped into the reception room. He had light brown blonde hair and deep blue eyes. My heart skipped a beat at his vaguely familiar face. "Michael?" I accidentally said his name out loud. Our eyes met in that instant. Michael's eyes widened as though he had seen a ghost. "William? William, is that you? Why are you here?" His slightly accented mix of Japanese and English stirred a buzz in the room. "You know him?" one of the client representatives asked in surprise. Michael nodded. "He was once my subordinate. I never expected to meet him here, so I went blank." Michael, the person who once dismissed me as a dreamer at NASA and ultimately forced me out. Still, I don't blame him entirely. I had my own faults too, and at the time, we simply couldn't see eye to eye. Michael looked just as shaken as I was by this unexpected reunion. He thanked the client before slowly lowering his gaze to the documents in my hands. Could it be the composite welding process you were researching?" His voice was filled with surprise and a hint of excitement. "Michael is currently looking for business partners in Japan and has approached us for cooperation," the lead client explained. Apparently, Michael had left NASA and was now working as a technical advisor for a US-based company. His team had begun showing interest in not only the aerospace industry, but also high-tech products for the general market, which had led him to visit this company. "William, you finally completed it." Back then, everyone said it was unrealistic. I could see the emotion welling up in Michael's eyes. He was usually the type who kept his feelings to himself, but his voice was trembling now. I couldn't help but give a bitter smile as I continued. "Yes, of course, there are still parts that need to be validated, but thanks to the cooperation of the people at the small town factory and Samantha's support, I was finally able to bring it to life. I realized that it's not about having large-scale equipment, and it's about finding a way to make it work at a practical level." Michael lowered his gaze, flipping through the documents repeatedly. His hand seemed to tremble slightly before he closed his eyes, taking a deep breath. Incredible! To think this technology could become reality like this. "William, I'm truly sorry for not believing in you back then and effectively forcing you out." The room stirred at Michael's direct apology. Even Samantha and the client representatives seemed unsure how to react. Michael turned toward the senior client representatives and began speaking with calm yet deliberate gestures. You may not know this, but the project he worked on at NASA was heavily criticized internally as being unrealistic. And yet, he's managed to bring it this close to practical implementation. I can personally vouch for him. He's a technician worthy of your trust. This proposal contains ideas so innovative that you could call them the first of their kind in the world. Hearing Michael's confident words, the client representatives exchanged perplexed glances. Just moments ago, they had worn stern expressions, but now they murmured things like, "If Michael says so." Michael was a former NASA elite, and his endorsement carried significant weight. All right, in that case, we'll reconsider this new plan. Of course, since it differs from the original terms, we'll need to make some internal adjustments, but if Michael is willing to guarantee it, we can't simply dismiss it. The presentation you gave earlier was convincing enough from a quality standpoint. When the senior representative said that, Samantha clutched the documents to her chest with a visible sigh of relief, bowing deeply. Thank you very much. We will give it our all. We promise to deliver the highest quality and meet the shortest possible delivery time without imposing unreasonable terms. William. Samantha turned toward me with a smile, a genuine, relieved smile. Her tense expression had softened, and I could see tears in her eyes. I gave her a small nod before turning back to Michael. Thank you, Michael. Without your words, convincing them would have been nearly impossible. Michael smiled awkwardly, then responded in mixed English and Japanese. No. This was your win. You earned it. And so, the deal that had once been on the verge of collapse was given a new lease on life. There were still many details to work out, and the schedule would no doubt be tight. But now, I felt like we could make it happen. Thank you so much, Samantha said again, bowing. The client representatives nodded in return. We look forward to working with you. The meeting would continue for a while longer, but the worst-case scenario had been avoided. I turned and exchanged a glance with Michael. His eyes were much softer than they had been back at the NASA research lab, as if to say, I finally understand. It made my chest tighten with emotion. William, congratulations. If you're ever open to working together again, I'd be more than happy to join you. But for now, I suppose you have a new challenge here, right? Yes, I have people I need to protect. Michael smiled in understanding and extended his hand toward me. I took his hand and shook it firmly. The bitter ending at NASA had finally reached its resolution. Samantha watched us with teary eyes and a smile. Then a few months later, the contract Tyler had recklessly signed had managed to get back on track thanks to our revised plan. Although the client had been angry at first, after seeing the high-quality prototypes and the smooth launch of the production line, their trust in us gradually returned. The company's performance, which had previously felt like walking a tightrope, gradually began to improve. Hey, William, we're counting on you for the next production line too. We want to tighten up the manufacturing schedule even more. Got it. Ryan, this time I think we can consolidate multiple processes. That new jig is turning out to be more useful than expected. I realized that my exchanges with Ryan had become much smoother without even noticing it. He's a stubborn craftsman at heart, but once he recognizes the value of a technical idea, he quickly comes up with ways to refine and evolve it. The small-town factory, which had been underestimated as just a subcontractor, was now starting to attract attention as a hub for cutting-edge technological applications. Even the parent company, which had previously treated us solely as a subcontractor, had begun to reconsider its stance and was now actively exploring investments to support the factory. The executives had started to show interest, asking, "What kind of project can we do next?" Samantha was also working hard to support her father, the company president, and to establish a solid framework for the business. Meanwhile, regarding Tyler, the one who had recklessly signed that one-sided contract and put us in a dire situation, his unilateral decisions were identified as a major issue after an official investigation by the parent company. Tyler was stripped of his previous position and projects, and was transferred to a less prestigious department. Officially, it was framed as a transfer to strengthen cooperation with other business units, but in reality, it was practically a demotion. Since then, Tyler had rarely shown his face at the factory. One evening, Tyler appeared at the factory for the first time in a while. "William, the official transfer order came through. It's essentially a demotion." He clenched his teeth in frustration, but his eyes had a certain sense of resignation, as if he had finally come to terms with it. Gone was the arrogance of before. There was now a trace of genuine humility. "Well, considering how reckless you were, it's not surprising. The deal with the client could have collapsed completely." Tyler's face twisted for a moment at my blunt words, but then he nodded. "Yeah, you're absolutely right, and I'm sorry for not apologizing sooner. I wanted to say this to you directly, flashing NASA's technology like that, trying to cozy up to Samantha. It was all because I was desperate. I'm really sorry." Tyler bowed his head deeply. There was no trace of his former arrogance. Be honest, I still had mixed feelings. We had suffered because of him. There was no denying that. But the fact remains that overcoming that hardship helped the company grow and helped me grow as well. Digging up the past and blaming him now wouldn't achieve anything. It's already over, so don't worry about it. If you've changed your attitude, I'm sure people will see that. It'll probably be tough in the new department, but hang in there. Tyler's lips tightened slightly, and he bowed his head once more. "Thank you. This time, I'm going to climb up based on actual results. I want to become someone who can truly deliver like you." His determined gaze had a different look than before. I gave a wry smile and replied, "I see," lightly patting his shoulder. If he could reflect on his mistakes and move forward, that was the most important thing. As the company's situation improved, my own work style also began to change significantly. I started working on technology development at the small-town factory while also getting more opportunities to present directly to the executives at the main office. In fact, Samantha has recently proposed the idea of officially establishing a research and development department at the main office, and she's planning to make me its central figure. If you become the head of the R&D department, it'll be easier to coordinate with the younger staff at the parent company, and you can also act as a bridge with the factory. My father also said, "We need to strengthen our technological capabilities from within, and we'll need close collaboration with the main office, right?" Samantha's words tumbled out in rapid succession, a triumphant smile on her face. "Yeah, that's true. A new project would be difficult to execute at the factory alone, so having full support from the main office would be ideal. But why do you sound so happy about it?" When I asked, Samantha opened her mouth to answer, but then hesitated, glancing away slightly. "Well, if you're stationed at the main office, we'd be able to see each other all the time. Meetings would be easier to arrange, and we could touch base whenever we need to." She started off listing logical business reasons, but her voice gradually grew softer. Her eyes darted nervously toward me, clearly flustered. "Isn't that a bit of a conflict of interest? Are you sure that's okay?" "It's not." "Well, maybe a little bit, but I'm human too. Wanting to work with you more closely, it's normal, right?" Samantha's cheeks flushed slightly as she defended herself, her expression both embarrassed and defiant. Watching her like that, I couldn't help but feel amused and oddly warm inside. "All right, I won't press you on that. Besides, having you around will make communication easier. You're good at stepping in and smoothing things over like a translator. I'd appreciate the help." "If that's the case, then fine." "Okay, it's settled. I'll make sure the R&D department and the factory work together smoothly." "Officially, of course." Samantha repeated the last part of her words as if trying to convince herself. Her cheeks puffed out slightly, but her eyes were sparkling, and I couldn't help but feel both amused and touched at the same time. And so, I officially transferred to the parent company's research and development department, only to be met with days that were far busier than I had imagined. Even so, as long as Samantha is with me, I know I can handle it. While being mindful of the boundaries between work and personal life, we would occasionally lean on each other just a little, and I started to feel that this kind of closeness wasn't so bad. I'm not running away anymore. I don't know exactly what kind of future awaits us, but I believe it's going to be a good one.